Law of Attraction Talk Radio. Get ready to be the best you can be. Stay tuned for the Law of Attraction Talk Radio with Jules. Welcome to the Law of Attraction Talk Radio. I'm Jules from beautiful, cool, clean, and economically thriving Southern California. You know, I am living in paradise, and I invite you all to begin to live in your paradise as well. Tonight, we have information that will let you take the first step in understanding the 50 trillion cells in your body that makes up your paradise. Dr. Bruce Lipton is with us tonight, sharing some absolutely incredible information and confirmation that our thoughts do create matter. So on with tonight's show with Dr. Bruce Lipton. His book, The Biology of Belief, is groundbreaking in the field of a new biology called epigenetics. Dr. Lipton is the former medical school professor and research cellular biologist. His experiments and that of other leading-edge scientists have examined in great detail the processes by which cells receive information. The implication of this research radically change our understanding of life. It shows that genes and DNA do not control our biology, that instead DNA is controlled by signals from outside the cells, including energetic messages emanating from our positive and negative thoughts. Dr. Lipton's profoundly hopeful synthesis of the last and best research in cell biology and quantum physics is being hailed as a major breakthrough, showing that our bodies can be changed as we retrain our thinking. Well, welcome, Dr. Lipton, to the Law of Attraction Talk Radio.
Well, thanks, Julie. I'm so happy to have this opportunity to be on the air and share some wonderful information.
Thank you. I am thrilled that you're here. Now, that begs the first question. What is epigenetics?
Well, interestingly enough, what most of us have been programmed with in our education and through the media, even to today, is something that is called genetic control, which just literally means control by genes. Epigenetic control is profoundly different, and the prefix epi means above. Like when I say the word epidermis, that means the layer above the skin. So when I say epigenetic control, then that literally means control above the genes. And this is a profoundly new view of how life works. The old view, genetic control, essentially says that our traits and characters and all aspects of our lives are in some way controlled by the genes that we inherited. So that sort of makes us a victim in that we didn't pick the genes and we can't change the genes and they control our lives. Then we're sort of like backseat drivers with the genes driving our biological vehicles. The new view, epigenetic control, reveals that the genes control nothing, that genes are exactly what we've always said they were. They're blueprints. And the relevance about that is that blueprints, I mean, if you go to an architect's office and you ask an architect, is that particular blueprint on or off? And they would look at you in this quizzical look like, well, what are you talking about? There's no on and off to a blueprint. It's a blueprint. And this is the wonderful part of the new biology, the new epigenetics. It says, yes, the DNA represents blueprints, but it's a contractor that actually selects the blueprints and can modify the blueprints to create whatever it's trying to construct. So when you look at the life of a human being, you recognize that the cells have genes in them, and the genes are blueprints, and then you say, well, who's the contractor? And the contractor turns out to be the nervous system, because its function is to look at the world and then send information to the cells And that information is used to select and modify the genes so that the biology is always adjusting to the environment, and this is what keeps a living thing alive.
Wow, that's interesting.
Well, it's interesting because I said the first one, genetic control, you're a victim because you didn't pick the genes and they control you. But the new one, epigenetic control, puts the nervous system, more specifically the operation of the nervous system, which we'll call the mind, between the environment and the genes. So that all of a sudden it says that the mind controls genetic expression. And why that's relevant is we have the power to change our minds. And if we can do that, then we can change our biology and our genetics and our lives. And this is actually what's always been demonstrated, but people, looking at the old belief system, look at anybody who changes their lives with their beliefs as strange or from California.
What were the discoveries that kind of transformed your life?
Well, as you mentioned, when I got into science, I preferred that over the path of spiritual information because in my personal history, there were a lot of people who spouted spiritual information, but their lives never really looked as good as the words they were talking about. So I said, maybe that's not the direction. I think I should go into science because that's where everybody believes the same thing. And that whole belief system of the fact that the human body is a biochemical machine controlled by genes and bought into the mechanics of a physical universe. And that's the way I look at biology. But my work on stem cells, which I started in 1967, which I always think about humorously because people think that stem cells are something like relatively new, and I was actually culturing stem cells 40 years ago. And the work from that presaged this new field of epigenetics because the work from that revealed that genetically identical cells, when placed in different environments, would turn into different kinds of cells. So I could take genetically identical cells and put some in one petri dish with one culture medium and they become muscle. Take the same identical cells in another petri dish with another variation on the medium and they became bone cells. And in a third dish, put even the same genetically identical cells and, again, with changes in the medium, create fat cells. And very logical. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to answer the question is, well, what controlled the fate of the cells? Well, obviously, the first step is they were all genetically identical. So it wasn't the genes that controlled the fate. It was the environment in which the cells ended up. So all of a sudden it says, oh, the information from the environment is shaping biology. Well, this opened my eyes because here I've been teaching medical students for years that, genes were controlling all these traits, and yet the cells in my tissue culture experiments revealed, no, the genes were responding to information in the environment. And why that ultimately became important is because in medical understanding, each human being is different because each one of us has a self. And I said, well, how do you know that's true? And the answer is because if you take Julie's cells and put them into Bob, then Bob's immune system is going to say, this is not self, and reject those cells. You take my cells, put them into Julie, Julie will reject my cells because her immune system will say, these are not self. And so the point is, well, every cell then must have an identity and of a self that distinguishes it from other people. When you get down to the nitty-gritty, as I was working with the molecular level of the cell's brain, the membrane, the truth is that the self is represented by a set of antennas, just like television antennas, little protein molecules, antennas, that are built into the surfaces of our cells. So each cell, most every one of our cells in our body has these self receptors. That's what it's called by science. They're antennas, like television antennas, receiving a broadcast. And actually I said, oh my God, the identity broadcast that is picked up by these self-receptors is something that's out in the environment, and it's not inside the cells. That thinking I, is not inside the body. I'm part of the environment that is received by the community of cells that are making up my body. And at that moment of recognizing my identity wasn't broadcast from the outside, then immediately said, oh my goodness, well, if you can't die, you're not even in the cells. And that blew my mind, of course. And then it also brought up the serious reality is if a future embryo is created that has the same exact set of receptor antennas on the cells that I have today, it will pick up my broadcast again at another time, and all of a sudden, reincarnation. Oh my God! So it's like here I am going from this mechanical nuts and bolts biology to a spiritual guy talking about reincarnation. It was like in 1 minute, actually, in my life. That's how fast it changed. When all of a sudden I understood the nature of the mechanism of how the cell controls its biology.
To hear the rest of this incredible, absolutely incredible interview, go to lawofattractiontools.com and click the Listen Live button.